And now for your listening pleasure, here's Pulizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to This Old Marketing, proudly brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. I'm Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 405, just like the freeway here in Los Angeles, for Friday, December 8th, 2023. And with me, as always, my friend, my colleague, and, a guy who definitely would have put Florida State in the college football playoffs, Mr. Joe Pulizzi.
I would have.
I know you would have.
Absolutely would have.
As soon as I saw the headline, I knew you would have.
I think this whole quality win thing is such BS.
Well, the player thing. I mean, literally, the NCAA has become FIFA, right? I mean, it's all about the players now, right? I mean, we should probably explain very quickly here for those who don't understand what we're talking about here or care, quite frankly. But
they talk about the quarterback for Florida State since he was out the last couple weeks, and their last two wins were not quality wins, whatever that is.
Sure, well, because they had a backup quarterback. They had a backup quarterback for the second to last game. Yeah. Then he got hurt, and then a third string quarterback for the last game. And now, and just for those of you who haven't followed the news, basically what has happened is that the NCAA have this new-ish for the last few years playoff system, and basically only a small number of teams. I think it's 6 teams total.
4, just 4. It's
4.
It will expand to 12.
Right, it's going to expand to 12, but now it's 4 teams, and so basically Florida State, who had an undefeated season, even with their backup quarterback and the third string quarterback who had to come in and play, and basically didn't get invited to the tournament, but Alabama did, which had a very similar record and all of that. It's just
Alabama lost.
Yeah,
Florida State went in. They did all the things they had to do. They won their conference championship.
Yeah.
Alabama, it's a very good team. Nothing wrong with it.
Oh, yeah, right. They're all good teams. Yeah.
So Alabama went in at this 4th slot instead of Florida State. The problem that I have with Alabama getting in and quality wins and whatever, if you watch the game before that Alabama played Auburn, Alabama should have never won that game. It was complete luck that they won that game. It was not a quality win. That was a survival technique. And I just don't see how they could make that decision to leave Florida State out. And I heard that the governor of the great state of Florida, Mr. DeSantis, was suing the NCAA.
Well, what a shock, right? Ron DeSantis is going to sue somebody. Yeah.
Which actually I think is one of his better moves.
Yeah.
If you had to put like the top 10 moves of Ron DeSantis I think this is number 3.
Yeah.
I
what would you put as number 1 and number 2?
I can't even
his
know.
Boots? Would you put his boots?
I don't.
His boots are number 1.
I don't even. Here's the problem with Mr. DeSantis. I have nothing on his politics or whatever. He just doesn't have the charisma that I believe you need to be elected.
No,
it just seems like whenever you hear him talk, it's almost like he's reading a teleprompter on the back of his eyelids.
That is exactly right. Yeah, he is so I grew up in Texas, and I will tell you, he is all hat and no cattle. I mean, he is that is there's no doubt about that.
That's a great reference. That is absolutely wonderful. So anyways, I'm a little bit upset about the whole BCS. I'm glad they're expanding, but there'll be a problem with it next year, whatever. I don't know what they're doing, but I like the other 3 teams that are in. I like.
Well, speaking of great wins, of course, completely flipping the script over to something that the audience might care about. Taylor Swift has won Person of the Year from Time Magazine.
Now that's a surprise.
Yeah,
I was totally floored.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: who else was in the running?
Well, right. I mean, who else this year could have been? Right. I mean, this had to be just a runaway win for her. I mean, because who else would you have picked, right?
Was there like a panda that was born at the San Diego Zoo or something? Like, I don't know what. There's been no other critical event. I guess they could have had the environment. Like sometimes they do crazy stuff like
that's
that, or Apple titanium.
Sure,
I don't know what else you could possibly
AI,
do.
I guess AI could have probably been
AI. You could have. It could have been the OpenAI board. Could have been groupthink of the year. I don't know. I don't know what I read the article. Did you read the Time Person of the Year article?
Yeah, I did. It was a good. I hated some of the pictures that they used and loved some of the pictures that they used. I hate the cover with her
and the cat.
Yeah,
is that a real cat? Was PETA
I think it's her cat. I think that's really her cat.
Shoot?
Yeah.
No, that's really her cat.
I think so. Yeah. She's a cat person for sure.
I didn't know if it was a real cat or a stuffed cat. Because if there's a picture where cat wasn't moving, I didn't know. I mean, that's so terrible.
Yeah.
The part of the article that I really had to think about, it basically said, how many conversations have you had this year about Taylor Swift?
Right.
And I'm like, I probably had more conversations with other people about Taylor Swift than any other person that wasn't in my family. Actually, probably more than people in my family. Just people asking me about Taylor Swift or the earthquake in Oregon or whatever, all the stuff that she did with her tour. And then of course you had Travis Kelce.
Yes.
Which
well, she has elevated him to great stardom for sure.
Which is I call Travis Kelce's name to me every time I see him on screen is Travis Swift.
Yeah.
And Travis Swift is when Taylor's not around, Travis is sad. He looks sad. He like mopes around. He's like that Ma'auto.
Well, he's definitely got resting.
Ma'auto.
Yeah,
he's the Ma'auto version of that.
Yeah, he's got resting mope face. That's for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Resting mope face.
Yeah, he definitely does. So does his brother, by the way. They both have resting mope face. But both of them are very highly entertaining. Their podcast is highly entertaining anyway. But yeah, you talk about a marketer who truly has revolutionized the way that music, entertainment, live shows, filmed, just a true entertainment multimedia brand. She has. It's just astounding what she's been able to do this year. Not just this year, but certainly this year being sort of the pinnacle of all of that. But just, for the last 10 years, she's been a juggernaut when it comes to the kind of marketing strategy. And clearly, she's got amazing people around her who are helping her through this. But from the movie, from the way that she did the distribution of the movie, from the way that she did her ticket sales, her live shows, the way that she funded the whole thing, marketed the whole thing. It's a business, an enterprise business case study, full stop.
What was really good about, just from also a marketing standpoint, and we talked a little bit about it, but that it's probably her, but her father funded the entire concert movie. 25 or $30 million, whatever they spent on doing the whole thing, so they could retain all the rights and then do whatever they wanted with it. Now, I know a lot of people can't do that, but totally smart move, right? They just didn't give it up to a regular production shop and say, okay, let's do the Hollywood thing like you would normally do it.
Owned media.
They're making so much money off of that. It's not even funny.
Owned media. She is an owned media sort of poster child, right? You talk about from the re-recording of her albums so that she would own all of the media, right? And then, from doing the movie in an owned media fashion, she's leveraging distribution where she needs to leverage distribution and paying for that distribution as a good marketer would, but she owns the content, she owns the audience, she owns and it's spectacular.
I think you're seeing it in everything. Whatever it was a couple months ago, I went to that author event called 20 Books, which is now called Author Nation. And the feeling through all these really amazing fiction authors was they were all trying to take the control back of their business model. They were saying we didn't want to give it all to Amazon or all through distribution. We want to figure out a business process so that we have direct connection with our audience and we can leverage that as part of our business model. And I think what's happening with Taylor is sort of part of this whole thing. It's like you have a lot of creators out there now asking themselves these really smart questions about, I don't just want to sell 1 million copies of my book, or I don't want to have a quick blip of revenue. I want to figure out a long-term business model that's going to work. Same thing for content marketing, right? Long-term, I want to make sure that this works for us. We see ROI, and it has to do with that direct connection with the audience and not leveraging everything into these other platforms like your TikTok, like your YouTube and Google. And I know we've been talking about it forever, and people have been insinuating that they're down with it, but I think now you're finally seeing that tide turn, right?
Well, yeah,
seems like it.
100%. And that applies, by the way, to B2B and B2C, because in so many ways, and this is my topic for my column next week that I'm writing, which is, if you need sort of the 2024 business case for why content marketing is such an important piece of this, it is about the relationship that you have with your wider audience, not just your, leads and opportunities and people that are in your pipeline, but literally the wider audience in general. Because in a world of AI, in a world of democratized content, in a world where everything is exponentially, even, more than we could ever imagine, more noisy than it's ever been because of the automation and creation of content, authors and originators and artists and creators, in many ways, the storyteller becomes more important than the story. And so the source of information, the source of entertainment, the source is going to become really, really important. And so if you don't have a relationship as a source, as a storyteller, as a content creator with your audience, then your content might as well be just automated and commoditized. So it's an incredibly important marketing strategy. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great point, and that's exactly why we warned last week about what Sports Illustrated did with their making up their whatever their AI bot-driven author, and they're sort of caught on it. Whether they knew they were going to or not. I mean, that really. How many people are going to say, I don't know if I want to trust this now because of I don't know who this person is telling the story. I mean, how many of the media companies we talked about over the past 12 months have gone out of business or their business models are hurting? But at the same time, the new media companies are these brands or creators that are taking control because they can. They don't. You don't have to go through a media outlet. But it could be like our first episode from 2013.
Yeah.
By the way, we just celebrated. Did we talk about that? We just celebrated the 10-year anniversary.
10 years. 10 years. Yeah. That was
November. Different.
I think our first episode was November 30th. Is that right?
It's very close. We're in the timetable. I don't really track the months and the years like normal people do anymore. Because once you get to be honest,
once you get past that 25-year anniversary, then it doesn't really just matter anymore. And
I don't even remember how I got here.
We're 400 shows into this. It's like we're 405 hours into this nonsense.
Do you ever think about why you took the phone call from me and we had the conversation that led to this podcast?
Because I was bored and I was driving. I
mean, so was I. We were both bored.
Yeah.
We're like, I don't know where I was. I was probably driving.
It's like, this will kill the time for another hour while I'm driving through the desert of Palm Springs.
God. Yeah. Unbelievable. I think we haven't changed at all. I think I actually have more hair. I think your hair is still long and flowy. I have more gray.
I have way more gray. Yeah, I have way more gray now. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I see pictures of myself now and I'm like, ooh, I really need to update my headshots because I definitely am. I mean, if it's possible, I'm more white than I am than I was even 10 years ago.
You need an AI filter. You need it's called the Miami filter.
That's right.
It makes you look real tan and
yeah. At least I don't put lifts. I don't put lifts in my boots. That's all I know is that I don't put lifts in my boots.
I've never done that. Although my dad did for his wedding. My dad's 5'2", and my mom is 5'4".
He put lifts in his shoes, though.
And
he didn't put lifts in
his
boots.
shoes.
Yeah,
so
that's different.
Be the same height.
That's different. And if you don't know what we're talking about here, just Google Ron DeSantis's boots, and you'll see what I mean. It's all hat and no cattle. All right, should we get to our show here? Should we actually?
Sure, why not? I thought we were into the show, but go ahead.
Yeah, there we go. Well, we got a wonderful show here. We've got a few stories to talk about. Google launched their big Gemini project, and we'll talk a little bit about that and maybe pair it up with some things that we've seen in the broader MarTech world over the course of 2023. Then we'll talk about purpose and brand marketing and how there was a backlash this year, or is there a backlash? And we'll talk about Spotify sort of hiding under the covers here and laying off 1,500 people. We'll talk about what might be the implications there. And then we'll talk about the NCAA, which we talked a little bit about just a second ago, and how they are now maybe turning the tables and saying, yeah, maybe it's okay for college football players to be paid directly by colleges. Then we'll get to our rants and raves section, of course, where I will talk a little bit about the forecast from Group M and Zenith and all the media agencies out there about the growth of paid advertising spending and what I think the implications are there. And Joe's going to talk about TikTok shopping because he's a big TikTok shopper.
Because I'm all over the TikTok.
You're all over the TikTok.
Not having a TikTok account,
I have shopped on TikTok, and I will.
Oh, good,
because I'm going to hear your take.
Then we'll save it because I live through other people on this stuff because I don't have the.
I'm a pretty heavy TikTok user. I'm not a creator yet. I've created the content, but I just haven't posted it yet. So, I know all of those who are out there waiting.
You're not going to build an audience on TikTok if you don't publish.
That's pretty much the best practice. There's your tweetable moment, folks.
Hard to get it's
hard to get the followers.
Hard to drink the water without turning the hose on.
That's great.
kind of thing.
Whew, thanks for that. That's probably. That is so good. That is so good.
You're like, thanks, Dad.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. Right. Well, by the way, I particularly liked your little subtle passive aggressive dig at the predictions column that you and I and so many participated in for Content Marketing Institute. Where you're like 70 predictions, and only one of them was about print, and that was me.
Well. Give me a break. Half the predictions were AI.
Of course they are. Of course they are. What else would you expect?
I mean, come up with something. No, I mean, all my friends, they've got some great predictions, by the way.
Yeah.
But I was like, come up with something different, like be bold. And I basically went out there and said, the next big thing is going to be print.
Yeah.
Because why not?
Enough about me.
Because when the zombie apocalypse really happens, print's going to be extremely important.
Print. Here we go. There we go. You heard it first. You heard it first here, folks.
I didn't think was it a little passive aggressive?
No, it was. It was. I'm totally joking, but your LinkedIn post, it totally, because I know you so well, your LinkedIn post totally made me giggle. Right, where you're like, everybody said this, and I'm the only one.
Yeah, I guess now that I read that, I'm to my of the 67 predictions, not one was about print.
That's right, except for me.
Except for me and my brilliancy.
All right, let's get to our first story here, which is, of course, about our friends at Google. We will link to an article here from Media Post, actually, and it is about. And there are a number of. It wasn't actually as big a announcement as I always sort of grade news on whether it finds me or not, and this did not find me. I actually was looking for stories for this week, and this is one of the ones that popped up.
It was the premiere or the top story in Morning Brew.
Yeah, it was. It was
but
one of the days.
You think it was sort of a yawner?
Let's find out
Okay.
here, shall we? So basically, the Google Gemini has launched, and the article from MediaPost opens up by saying Google Gemini launched on Wednesday in a long-awaited debut of the company's most powerful artificial intelligence large language model. It is a multimodal and capable of reasoning across text, images, audio, video, and code. Maybe the most boring lead I've written or read all year. Anyway, the company said it has started to experiment with Gemini in search, where it is making Google Search Generative Experience, the SGE, for those of you keeping up with the acronyms, faster for users with a 40% reduction in latency in English. Man, this just reads like a brochure. It will also become available in services like Search, Ads, Chrome, and Duet AI. The technology works based on state-of-the-art performance. Man, this is just a press release, so I'm just going to stop reading. But basically, Gemini, the underlying technology for what Google is doing on search AI, as well as its Duet when you go into the Google Office, has launched. And I've started to notice it because I'm heavily using Google search, obviously, and I signed up so that basically at the top of search results are showing the sort of AI generated results, which I'm still, to be honest, like not that impressed with. But I don't know. Do you have a take on this launch of this new AI
Did you watch the
from
little
Google?
video? The little
I did watch. Yeah, I did watch it.
The blue duck.
Yeah.
Yes. So my take on it is that Google will probably be a key player in making this work, outside of the fact that they have billions and billions of dollars. But the fact is they generally, when they're second or third to market, they figure out a way to become the market leader. And they did so in search. Google was not the first search engine.
Of course.
Nor
was it the first paid advertising search.
That's right.
They acquired their way into that business.
Historically, they've done a very good job watching things happen and then saying, okay, let's take the best of all these things and move forward. What's interesting to me is that Google's suite, if you will, of, audio and textual and video AI generative services will be in one suite. They'll all be coming from the same place versus ChatGPT, where you have ChatGPT text is over here and video or picture DALL-E 3 is over here. So I think that seems like an opportunity for them to move forward. And whatever they talk about, how the learning LLM that this whole thing was created for was 90% faster, whatever the PR words. They used very fancy PR words to say that their LLM is one of the best around. I would imagine that Google's going to do very well. And I think that Google has to do well with this because of the fact that you and I've talked about at length. Their search these days sucks.
Yeah, that's right.
And anyone that's just
they've got to make moves here quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day about being in the board in like the Google boardroom over the past 6 months. And for the first time, you've got to think that Google executives are sweating, saying, maybe we're going to be in trouble with this one. Maybe our cash cow of search and owning that market is going away, because as much as you want to say that, oh, ChatGPT is wrong, or the LLM is not pulling all the correct information, you and I both know lots of people that use ChatGPT alone for their search. And more of that seems to be happening, which seems weird to me. But then if you go over and you do a search on Google, this morning, for whatever reason, I was doing a search on print content marketing. And I'm like, okay. And I'm not saying that the article that I wrote for CMI wasn't a good one back in 2012.
Right.
But are you kidding me that's the
number one result?
Search. Yeah. That's the search that that's it from 11 years ago, that article.
Yeah.
It's got to be something better than what they're doing. And so they've got to move. We'll see. What do you think about this?
Well, when I think, so first of all, I think it's interesting to me that they are positioning this as a fundamental technology that will underpin all the other things, right? So they're, so they basically, the Duet, So this is more of a platform technology than it is sort of a user focused thing, right? So it's, in other words, it's a technology that powers Google search. It's a technology that powers Duet. It's a technology that powers the other, audio and image creation and all those kinds of things that Google will productize in a different way. So
Yep.
I think they learned there, because you can see one of the challenges, because right now in ChatGPT 4, you can have, you can ask it to make images for you, right? You can ask it to make images for you. And if you have a paid account, I believe is the way that you have to do this. But if you have a paid account, you can ask, and it uses DALL-E to create those images, that technology. So they've slowly started to, and I think that's a lesson to your point about them being sort of second to market here, is that they're, it was funny because I asked this question. In fact, it was the first time I asked this question was when I was on Paul Reitzer's event. And this was early on. This was early on this year, like in the spring of this year. And one of my questions was, I wonder if ultimately this isn't, something that a company or a person will buy point solutions for. In other words, a company won't buy a generative AI tool for their marketing team and an analytics AI for their analytics team and a predictive analytics, for their supply chain team and, all that. In other words, is it going to just be an operating system that we purchase, and then ultimately there are applications built on top of it? To me, that's what Microsoft is trying to do here. That's what Microsoft is really all about, is trying to build in a new type of operating system that we would call AI. And this seems to me what Google is doing as well, which is an interesting challenge, because it is harder to market to consumers that way, right? In other words, if I go ask my wife, for example, about Gemini and Google and all their AI stuff, she's like, I don't know. I don't know. But if I ask her about ChatGPT, she's like, oh yeah, I got the app. I got I go on their website. I know how to use it. It's all, so it's a very interesting idea to see what will win the day, right? So it may be that we start to see Microsoft and or Google sort of start to win the B2B idea here of operating system as platform, as AI, and then we may see, sort of OpenAI win the consumer game, right? When the consumer sort of, this is how consumers utilize AI.
Well, yeah, I don't think Google will look at OpenAI's got a lot of momentum and they've got a lot of money behind them.
Right.
And whatever's going on with their sci-fi stuff lately, I have no idea. But Google's not going to let that happen. They're going to take the $100+ billion in excess cash and figure out how to win consumer search, consumer findability.
Well, they have to do that, right? Yeah, they have to do that. But it brings up a fascinating question, though, which is, am I always, in other words, do you bring the baggage along with you? You know what I mean? In other words, Google search will always have some level of baggage to it, brand baggage to it, that it's not shiny and new, like ChatGPT. And so if you use Google and it's relatively the same experience, but it's branded Google search, but now it's AI, quote unquote, driven, do people care? And this is, I think, I don't know the answer to this question, but do people care? In other words, if it's the same, let's assume it's the same exact, kind of learning model, the same exact sort of technology, because I'm doing it through Google search and I'm already having a bad experience with Google search. Am I going to I'm going to trust the results less? Am I going to not like the experience as much because it comes with that brand baggage, or because it's shiny and new and coming from, OpenAI, and because it's, special? It's the same experience, but just because it's shiny and new and doesn't have that brand baggage to it, will I think that I have a better experience?
I don't think it has a negative brand baggage to do anything of the sort. I think it'll be fine if they integrate into AI and their results are better, whatever. It's like Ford Mustang had a few years where that Mustang was a stinker. right? but the Mustang
right.
brand continued on, and they went through it and saying, "Oh, hey, the 1992 was amazing, thankfully, because the 87 sucked." Whatever, right? I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah,
Google.
you may be right.
People just want
you may
good
absolutely
results,
be
right? You use Yelp until Yelp doesn't work for you anymore. Then you go to
Well, right, but that's the thing, right? You use Yelp till Yelp doesn't work for you anymore, but then you don't come back to Yelp, even if they have some shiny new thing.
Do you think
right?
people? I don't know. I guess in some cases they aren't. Maybe they won't get a chance to get it back for those few people. I don't know I would love to know what the percentage is of people that have just gone to the ChatGPT 4, whatever the version is, full time for their search, which seems just strange to me.
Yeah,
because you're not. You can't. Like I think a lot of searches are news generated, and because it's not up to the minute, you can't use that.
Well, there's that too, right?
But it will be.
Yeah,
it will be.
There's all of that as well. Well, Google apparently is, right? So Google apparently is in real time, or as much as real time as you possibly can be.
Yeah, or you can get really old search results that are 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Google AI.
Maybe that's
Google AI.
Google, give me. Yeah. How did the Cleveland Browns do in the 1964 NFL championship?
And by the way, how entitled are we now as consumers, where that we're like, oh, Google search. It's 20 years old. God, that's an antique. What are you kidding me?
So
that's
old.
It's like, I mean, we should still marvel at the fact that there are trillions of documents out on the web that are being searched every single day, and that we're being brought those results in microseconds. I mean, it's just that technology is already just mind blowing. But then we're already like, we're on to the, we're just so entitled as consumers these days.
I'm reading Lee and Andrew Child's new book called The Secret. That's the new Jack Reacher book.
Sure.
It's set in 1992.
Okay.
And when they're investigating a case, they're using fax and phone for everything. And you forget pre-internet how we had to do things. Like, how could we ever, like, I was talking to a younger person recently where she said that she would be scared to leave her house without the phone.
Yeah.
And we were talking, there was a group of us Gen Xers there that were talking about, we used to tell our parents where we were going. We would go there and do whatever else we were going to do, and we'd be back by whenever we said we were going to be back.
That's
6,
right.
7, and then they had no idea what we did in that 12-hour period. We were just gone. And then she's like, oh, really? Like, you couldn't be tracked? And it's like, yes, it was amazing.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you this. So every single person that I know of in 1990s in their car was a thick book. It was 2 inches thick, and it was a spiral round book, and it was a must. You had to buy it. It was called the Thomas Guide, and the Thomas Guide was literally a 200, 300 page book, which was a map of LA, and everybody had one because you had to have one. It was the only way that, how do you know where you're going and what the alternative routes are and how do you get around? And it's, everybody had that book in their car. Yeah. Anyway,
it's I feel like we're old. That we're just telling people. How does Robert Rose say he's old without saying he's old? Well,
that's right. He brings up the Thomas Guide.
I had this book, Thomas Guide, and it had exceptionally long pages of information.
I like your impression of me. I like your
I don't have
impression of me.
I have no information
spot
on
on.
Robert Rose. I don't know how to do your old man Robert.
Yeah. All right.
I'm Robert Rose. I'm old. That's all I got.
All right. Well, I tell you what. Why don't we pay some bills here? Why don't we pay a couple of bills here before we move along?
Let's see what happens. Yeah.
Hey, did you know that HubSpot just launched an AI chatbot that helps you build awesome campaigns at scale with just a few prompts? Yeah. It's called Campaign Assistant, and it's a totally free-to-use AI tool that will transform the way you build marketing campaigns at scale. And the best part? Well, the best part is it works seamlessly with all of HubSpot's marketing and sales tools to scale your output across email, social, and more. So AI your way to the most effective campaigns yet at HubSpot.com/campaign-assistant. Can I tell you about a great podcast? It's called Inclusion in Marketing, and it's hosted by Sonia Thompson and brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. Inclusion in Marketing digs into important topics like belonging, customer experience, diversity, and how you can practice inclusive marketing authentically. One of the more awesome recent episodes featured a cool exploration into the meaning of belonging, all related to Beyoncé's Renaissance World Tour. Yeah, it was really interesting. So go find it and follow it. You'll find the Inclusion in Marketing podcast wherever you follow your favorite pods.
Like how you held that note there at the end.
Yeah.
It was well done. You could read like bedtime stories. It's very, when you want to, you have a very soothing voice.
Well, thank you.
Have you ever think about doing that?
I have been told that I do have. Well, I've been told many times that I have a face for radio, but I have been told that my voice actually is nice to listen to. So I'm always very appreciative of that. But no, I have not. I mean, other than narrating the books that you and I have written together, I've not done anything like that.
I wonder if when you check and see how long somebody's been listening to a podcast, I wonder if our numbers are better because people fall asleep listening. I'm totally. I mean, when somebody really needs a good night's sleep, they're like,
we could do a special episode where we do like an ASMR thing, right? Where we just like scratch the microphone and talk very low and in a very deep voice and just say
those.
You're sitting on a beach.
I didn't even know ASMR was a thing, and then
waves washing across you.
Maybe that's a special
twinkling.
We could do a special episode of
a special ASMR episode.
Hey, this is Robert Rose, and I'm doing ASMR.
Yeah, yeah. Your impressions of me today are just spot on. It's so good. It's so good.
I tell you, I only one I do is Elmo, and I'm not doing it on the show. It's the only impression I do. I got Elmo. I got nothing else.
I think you should do Elmo next episode because we're going to do a couple of special episodes here when we get into the holidays. But
do you think that how long could people listen with me doing Elmo the entire time? You do Sean Connery, and I'll do Elmo.
I have to work into Sean Connery.
It will be the least important thing that ever happens.
Yeah, it takes me a bit to work into Sean Connery, but yeah, we could definitely do that. We should definitely do that.
Said nobody ever.
Right.
Okay. What do we
got? All right, let's move on to our next story here, which comes to us courtesy of Marketing Dive, and it is about a brand backlash. It says, "Are 2023's epic marketing fails part of a bigger problem?" Controversies impacting Bud Light and Target have sent a chilling effect across the industry, but purpose may be more important than ever, says the author of this article. Opens up by saying, purpose-driven marketing came under fire in 2023 with controversies roiling high-profile brands, profile brands for months on end. The outcry, which extended beyond the online kerfuffles,
kerfuffles
and roiling. Yeah,
this might be AI generated.
Yeah, to actually dent sales and revenue has sent a chilling effect across an industry already contending with economic constraints. While the case for purpose remains strong, with plenty of research touting the potential benefits to the bottom line, these false steps may be symptoms of a larger underlying problem related to weak brand building. CMOs, under growing pressure to tie their work to short-term results, have spun too far forward. Performance media, says experts, making their brand's positioning less defined and resilient against misfires. Boy, do I disagree with that, and we'll talk about that in a second. At the same time, advertisers and agencies alike are contending with the existential threat posed by the rise of general artificial intelligence, which could make the lack of distinct brand identities more of a liability. Marketers have spent much of 23 wondering whether their jobs are imperiled by automation, but purpose carries a degree of complexity and nuance that could still require the human touch to pull off. Goes on the article then to basically talk about the perfect storms of AI and technology and performance-based marketing and how that has truly affected this whole idea of purpose-driven, topic-based marketing. But anyway, what do you think about all this? Are they right? Is this the right challenge that we're seeing marketers face right now?
I think I'm a little torn, to be honest, because when there's a CMO that starts talking about purpose-driven marketing historically, and I love it. I love what the importance of certain issues and getting behind them and standing for something. I love when brands do that. But what I found is that they only do it when their financials are in order. When there is a brand out there who is struggling financially, the purposes go to hell, to be honest. That's what you generally see. And that's my concern with the whole purpose-driven marketing. I know you and I both know a lot of wonderful thought leaders, authors, writers that have taken the purpose-driven marketing path. And we've talked about it a lot. I mean, I remember P&G back in the day, Pritchard and the whole thing. But when times get tough, out the window they go. Forget that purpose. So when you generally see all the great case studies around purpose-driven marketing, it's with somebody that's doing really, really well, performing great. When they're not performing well, forget it. And that's why normally when I look at it, I don't even give it two thoughts about the purpose-driven brands for 2024, because those are the brands that are doing really, really well profitably. And they're doing all their other marketing really well, so they have the time to focus on this. I know that's a very cynical way to look at it, but that's the problem that I have with it.
Yeah, I think you're right on the symptoms, right? I think you're right on the symptoms, but I think the disease is simply that it comes down to from a business strategy perspective. Like if we pull it all the way up into the C-suite. And we say, what is the business strategy problem here or the disease here? It's that many brands see these purpose-driven campaigns or purpose-driven marketing as a means of making noise rather than actually explaining what they really believe in. And so I think that gets down to what you just talked about, right? Which is that they see it as a tactic of it can be afforded during good times, but not afforded during bad times because it's a higher risk, performative type of
and a more longer term,
and it's instead of a longer term strategy, right?
Yeah.
And so the successes that we see here are where brands earn their way in over time and truly believe what it is they're talking about. And I don't mean the people in the marketing teams. I mean, the brand, everybody in the business, all the way up to the CEO, stands behind whatever it is that the brand is saying in that particular moment. This is why you can have Ben and Jerry's take such, to some people controversial, to some people not so controversial takes and everything. It's imbued in everything they do, right? Yeah. It's how REI can do this. It's how Nike can do this. It's
Patagonia is another one.
Patagonia. It's all of these companies that we go, well, yeah, of course, that's what they do because it's imbued into what they truly believe. The reason that you see someone like a Bud Light get in trouble here is not because of the position they took. It's because that they didn't really believe it. Right. In other words, when the immediate reaction, and we talked about this on the show before, right? When the immediate reaction from the executives is, oh, we're sorry, we didn't mean to offend anybody. It's like, no, you've already come out in a defensive position. You should have, if you're already sorry that you didn't mean to offend anybody, well, then you should have not taken the position in the first place.
Yeah.
And so what you've done ostensibly, and I've talked about this before, is the interesting thing about where Bud Light is right now isn't that they made a cohort mad and isn't that they made another cohort mad. In other words, one of their marketing segmentations was really mad at them for backtracking. And another one of their marketing segmentations was really mad that they took the place in the first place. The biggest thing is that the big messy middle of who would normally buy the product went, I don't care. And that's the worst of all, right? Is when you get to a point where your purpose-driven marketing isn't making people mad or happy or overjoyed, a small group. It's when the larger group that you're trying to get to buy your product goes, I just don't care. I don't care about who they are as a brand. You've now made me not care. That's the worst of all possible outcomes. And so that's when you get sort of, I'm not buying your brand as Bud Light. I'm not buying your brand because, you stand up for, LGBTQ rights, and then the LGBTQ community is mad because you backtracked against it, and you're throwing your major influencer under the bus. Now everybody else doesn't buy because it's like, I don't want to be part of it. I don't care. I don't care to be part of it. So I'll just go buy something else. And it's
the same thing with content marketing, right? It's the campaign mentality versus this is taking our brand mission and executing it throughout everything we do.
That's right. And so the article gets to this point of saying, the idea of short-term results. I don't disagree, by the way, that CMO, we talked about this when I actually agreed with our, well, I'm not sure he's a friend, but certainly he would, somebody who would not call us a friend necessarily. He doesn't even know us, but anyway, Mark Ritson, he had this point that I talked about in my rants and raves a couple of weeks ago, that there is the short-term performance marketing idea, and that many U.S. companies have gotten wrapped around the axle of that, and basically limited their creative process and brand building exercises because they're so wrapped around the axle of performance-based marketing. But I don't think that has anything to do with regard to, and in fact, maybe just to your point, the opposite of what's going on here with regard to purpose-driven marketing, which in many ways is about trying to capture that performance-based, that very performance-based, let's make something that'll go viral kind of idea. And really, let's stir the pot a little bit. Let's do something controversial or provocative that really stirs the pot and gets people to watch and talk about it and share. And that's usually the beginning of a conversation that's going to get you into trouble if you're talking about something. We so often will see some of these big missteps and go, how the hell can that happen? Like who in that boardroom approved that, right? That said, that, yes, that's the way we want to go. And when you start to realize how pressure filled the idea is that, that we want to do this, then you start going, yeah, I can see how that decision was made. It's wrong and it's awful that it got made that way, but that's the way we lose our, and it has nothing to do with AI. It has nothing to do with AI and sort of the human touch, because if anything, I think AI will probably exacerbate this problem.
I think it's when purpose-driven marketing feels more like newsjacking, that's where we have a problem.
Yes,
and that's why I've never liked the whole idea of newsjacking. And I know it's worked for a lot of people, so my apologies to those that it's worked for. But it's like, oh, what's going on, and how can we insert our message inside, or our brand inside what's going on out there? And I think that's a lot of what happened with Bud Light. They tried to catch a wave.
Yes,
and they didn't. They went the other way on them.
That's right. Well, and I wrote about this a few months ago about newsjacking, and the problem is that, just exactly to your point, that's what a lot of people think newsjacking is like inserting our brand into some, controversial topic so that we can ride that wave. When newsjacking is done really well, it's about how do we use the news to actually drive something that we're already doing or that we already believe in, right? So that's when it really works. It's like, if you can tie the news into something that you've already established for yourself, or that you've already done, or that you're already doing, now it really works. You know what I mean? It's like, the famous example of that is when the Australian insurance company, when Obama was going to go visit Australia for the first time, the Australian insurance company wrote a big press release how they gave him an insurance policy against crocodiles and sort of all those kinds of things. And it made the news, right? So it was imbuing something that was already part of their sort of interesting and brand into something that was newsworthy. And that's where newsjacking can work, that this does not.
obviously did not. Not in Bud Light's ccase. They're
No.
still reeling. I think I think it's still
The
dropping.
CMO,
Their sales
yeah,
are
the
still
CMO
dropping.
quit. Yeah, the CMO just
Yeah, the
left the
CMO
company. I believe.
quit. Yeah, he quit.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a quitting
Yeah.
that was happening, not a
That's
firing.
right. Exactly. It was one of those mutually
It's like,
agreed upon
yeah.
things. Yes.
Here, let me tell you what's going to happen here. The
Right.
CEO walks in. It's like, you're going to quit.
Yeah. Exactly.
You are going to resign.
That's right.
Right now.
That's right. All right, let's get to our next story here really quickly here so we can move through these quickly. Well, speaking of quitting and speaking of you're going to quit, well, yeah, it looks like Spotify just said that to 1,500 people. The headline here from Morning Brew says Spotify lays off 1 in 6 employees. The platform is transitioning from a growth mindset to a profitability push. Yeah, that's what the kids call it these days. Anyway, the article opens up by saying days after virtually placing you in a random college town based on your listening habits, Spotify struck a somber note by saying it will let go 1,500 employees. CEO Daniel Ek announced yesterday that the company is cutting 17% of its workforce in order to hit financial targets. And basically, Ek cited the need to right-size costs amid an economic slowdown. So the article goes on. What do you think?
I think that every one of these companies are using the right, we talk about right sizing all the time. We're like with New York Times, the New York Times right sized. Well, here's another one. Google right size. Spotify is now right sizing because of they hired too many people at one time. I think what's more than anything else, at least what I see happening is that you have 2 key platforms out there, TikTok and YouTube, that are key competitors to Spotify. Whether Spotify wants to say they are or whether you believe they are doesn't matter. Those other two channels don't pay anything for the most part for their content. Spotify went on the other side, more of the premium. They bought Gimlet. They're going to create these amazing shows that are going to win Pulitzer Prizes and all this kind of stuff. Well, that's gone. So they're trying to figure out that, okay, well, how can we survive mostly? And they do already off a lot of this free content. They want to go that direction. It's just hard to be the Netflix in that category when your competition doesn't have to do that, especially TikTok. So, yeah. And I love Spotify, by the way. I'm not a big user of it. You are more than I am. I think that they're going to be a player for a long, long period of time, but I think that they got it wrong or didn't see the other train coming down the track when it comes to, wow, you don't have to spend money on content acquisition anymore. So they're trying to say, take that out of the budget. And with that goes 1,500 people.
Yeah. Well, I think just to your point, to me, this was always coming. Right. And I think honestly, I have to think that the reason that they're doing this now is because it's the holiday. It's, people, it is likely to not be, if they had done this earlier in the year, it would have been a much bigger news story.
Yeah. And
I think this was all, with the number of acquisitions, the article brings up the fact that it was part of a hiring spree during the pandemic. Yeah, maybe. I think it's more to your point about the acquisitions. They've made a lot of acquisitions over the last couple of years, and those acquisitions, usually take time to merge. We're seeing a very similar thing right now happen with VMware, right? VMware and Broadcom. That merger has been around for a long time. I mean, but literally in the last 2 months is when the transaction finally happened. And now and then we're starting to see the layoffs because of the double, basically them being able to say, hey, listen, where do we doubled up? Where do we not have, where we have surplus people and all those kinds of things. And with their acquisitions of all these different products, including Gimlet Media, you're starting to see them say, there's a lot of, we just have too many. I mean, that's the whole point of an acquisition, is that you're making more efficient the businesses that you're putting together. And so this was always going to happen. And it looks like, and I think Daniel Ek is a very thoughtful manager when it comes to these things. I think they're basically saying, let's do this once. Let's do this riff once, and let's not, so let's make it deep and cut, the cuts deep. and move into 24 and really try to move this thing to a smarter business.
It's just interesting to me that there's not a heck of a lot left of Gimlet Media.
Yeah.
That was a huge deal.
Yeah, it was a huge deal.
And
yeah,
and I'm sure, I mean, the talent's still, a lot of the talent's still there. Some of the shows are still there, but that model seems to be going by the wayside. You're not going to see these big podcast networks be bought up because of the content itself.
Did you listen to Kai Risdal's show?
No.
Where he had the podcasting. He did a whole segment on the business of podcasting and where it is right now. And a bunch of the experts were on there talking about how, we're in a slump right now because of the glut of content and because of the ways that the acquisitions have happened and because of the economy and inflation and all those kinds of things. But they expect it, the expectation, the sort of, I guess the glass is half full sort of story was they expect in 24 for that to start to clear out a little bit, and that podcasting will go through a bit of more of a, the return back to a growth cycle rather than sort of the decline that it has seen over the last, 12 or 15 months.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just the excess of some of these larger shows and some of these buy-ups. But I always saw that podcasting and continue to see more consumers, just a little bit more than the year before listening, a little bit more and a little bit more. But you're right.
Yeah.
There's a lot to listen to. And then I think people just get into their habits. These are the three that I listen to. I'm not, it's very hard to break through with a new podcast now. What the Kelseys did with their New Heights podcast is phenomenal because they just came out of nowhere. Of course, they had a couple big promotion machines behind them.
Well, and to your point that you always make, it's easier to build an audience when you already have an audience, right? I mean, so those two had an audience of some level, right?
Yeah.
And combining themselves, and it was, they basically quote unquote double their audience overnight. In other words, they're fans of both of them. And then of course the Taylor Swift thing certainly helped, but that really, I think, got them to a viable place, a minimum viable audience, if you will, right away.
Well, that's a really good point for people thinking about in 2024 launching a podcast. And if you do not have an audience built, you better have a lot of marketing, distribution, partnership plans in place to make sure you get in front of people. The much better way to do it would be to build a newsletter audience of some kind, build that for a couple of years, and then diversify into a podcast kicker. Yeah. That's the much easier way to do it. Just coming out of nowhere and launching the podcast, unless you have that audience, really, really tough to do. And we've seen a lot of podcasts that haven't gone anywhere. Like, oh, what's happening? Whatever. It's like, well, you're all by yourself out here.
Yeah.
I know you're distributed on Apple and you're distributed on Spotify, but they're not serving you up to listeners. You have to get them to your program. So.
Things that make you go, when you're part of that podcast network, things that make you go,
Right?
Yeah. Well, we're giving some thought to that anyway.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Enough about that. Do you want to cover this NIL thing real quick with the NCAA?
No, I think that we've covered most everything. And the only thing I would say about it, we'll put it in the show notes, is
fantastic. We will put
it in the show notes. It's just interesting what it's out there. The NCAA is looking more at the colleges taking over a lot of these NIL rights for there, and it looks almost like an employee relationship.
Yeah,
it's interesting to know how this is happening. If you're seeing what's going to happen in the
basically the NCAA is saying that colleges can pay their athletes. So that's the bottom line, which is turning it into junior professional sports. So,
but you're already seeing it with the transfer portal.
Of course, the transfer portal is already
because if you're like McCord for the quarterback for Ohio State, he's like, I don't want to be under Ryan Day anymore. Yeah. I want to go and I want to play for another team next year.
That's exactly right.
Didn't know you could do that, but you can.
All right, let's get quickly to our rants and raves section, where Joe and I go off on a little bit of a rant or a little bit of a rave over something that makes us feel like we're wearing John DeSantis. John DeSantis. What the hell?
John DeSantis. I like John DeSantis's boots. Let's start a podcast called John DeSantis's Boots. And the boots talk.
Love it.
And it's a big hat and no cattle.
My gosh. I'm already there. I like it. John DeSantis's boots.
You know what our goal should be is to get more followers off of John DeSantis's boots than the governor.
Oh my, that's very funny.
See if that would be if we had no F's to give, then maybe that's what we do.
That is correct. Anyway, so would you like to go first or shall I go first?
I'll go. I'm living through other people because I don't join some of these social platforms, and I won't. That's right. And I still haven't joined TikTok, but I was I was observing other folks, and we were around family recently, and there was this younger person at 18 years old doing all of her shopping on TikTok shopping. Yeah. And I didn't know at the time that was a thing, but apparently it has come out, and you say, and I wanted to get your take on this thing, but wow. If you're Amazon, here's a competitor that long term I could see TikTok shopping really move and take things. So we've already seen, I've seen the ads, like Google's really pushing their Google shopping big time. And I think that's where the next horizon seems to be for TikTok shopping. And I wanted to get your take. How easy is it? Is this a formidable competitor? Should we start paying attention to this? Do I need to join TikTok just to do the shopping experience? Because I don't want to.
No, I don't think. You in particular, no, I don't think so, because you have, look, I think you should try TikTok. I know you've said before that you're afraid that you'll love it and you'll get addicted to it. I think you can probably muster a little more self restraint than that, but
I don't know if I can. I'll give you an example. So my wife downloaded QS Watermelon. It's this game where you have have you seen it? Like two of the fruits come together, they make one fruit, and you got to build this watermelon.
That's right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let me try it. Well, 6 hours later, I'm still trying to play this thing, and I totally gotta. Well, all
right, fair enough.
And then now I have deleted it from my phone. I will never come back and play it again because I can't handle QS Watermelon.
Fair enough.
That's where I'm at. I don't think if I can't handle the watermelon, how am I going to handle the TikTok?
That should be that's the title of your new book. I can't handle the watermelon.
I'm going to put it in my bio.
Yeah.
I can't handle the watermelon.
How am I going to handle it? If you can handle the watermelon, you can handle the TikTok.
The TikTok.
You can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. Okay.
Yeah. So anyways,
yes, no, I have experienced it. I have, it's fascinating. It's good. It's, I have also been one of those people to do total impulse buys on Instagram and Facebook. Like I'll see some ad for a cool shirt or a hat or something like that. And I'm a total sucker for some of those impulse buys. But I've tried it out and it's good. Yeah, it's really good. It's if I were marketing, consumer, basically it's mostly consumer packaged goods, obviously, but it's a threat. It's a real thing.
Can I be, let's say I'm a creator on the platform and can they click on the thing that I'm talking about, or I'm wearing the shirt and buy that? Or these are just ads that are running into, is it a separate thing? Like, is it within the content?
I don't know the capabilities of it. What I have seen is mostly the latter, right? Where it's mostly just an ad for something, and then there's a link, kind of a link in bio.
You can buy it directly off of TikTok.
Yeah, you can buy it directly through TikTok and literally do the thing. So yes.
Okay. Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
What is your
I very quickly here. Basically, I've written a little bit about this, but every year, Group M, Zenith, Magna, which are all media, either research firms or media agencies, media buying agencies, to be clear, they all do their predictions about the ad growth, and they sort of review the year that was. And so, much to, I guess, surprise, it was basically a good growth year for paid media, a good growth year for paid advertising, and most of them are predicting a pretty rosy year. Now, a lot of this is outside of the political advertising. So what they do is they say, look, next year's going to be gangbusters because politics. But this is outside of politics. And they were saying, some of them are a little more modest in their predictions, and some of them are a little more, 7.2% versus 5%, basically. That's reasonable growth in any of the paid media. What was interesting was that they all talked about the exponential growth of retail media networks. And it's one of those things where we spend so much of our time thinking about B2B. In some cases, we don't really pay attention to this, but retail media networks have become the fastest growing way to basically a channel for you to put your paid advertising against. If you don't know what paid retail media networks are, the easiest and most prominent example of this is Amazon, right? Where you can go buy search ads on Amazon, or you can go buy, they have whole programs where you can buy advertising, banner advertising, you can buy search ads, you can buy elements to put content in so that the shopping experience is more robust and rich media and all this kind of thing. And basically it's just a paid media thing across their network. Walmart has it, Target has it. There are, Nordstrom has it. It's not just online. Mostly what we're talking about here is on e-commerce channels, eBay, Alibaba, Best Buy, Costco, Instacart. They all have these abilities to buy these advertising. But there are also in-store things happening as well. CVS has them in-store where there's big monitors and kiosks where you can see ads for things. And Nordstrom has this and they're in-store. And so all of this is really starting to come together. And it's a fascinating thing because it's not just banner ads and it's not just sort of low funnel, like if you like this, you should buy that, sort of filling your shopping cart sort of thing. It starts to become much more of a brand exercise for many. We're starting to see a real trend of brand advertising in these retail media networks. And I think it's in large part due to, if you think about brand advertising, the reason we do it, the reason we buy a full page ad in Wall Street Journal or the New York Times is because we get a bit of a brand halo, right? Ooh, you had a full page ad in the New York Times. Ooh, you had a full page ad in Wall Street Journal. You get a bit of a brand halo around the trust of that brand. And I think the same thing is starting to happen now, like on Amazon. Like if I go advertise my book on Amazon, I'm getting a bit of brand and trust halo around the fact that it's on Amazon. And here's my commentary or sort of my, sort of point to all of this, which is, yes, this is a huge thing. If you're in retail or if you're in consumer packaged goods and you need to think about this, you should be really thinking about this for your 24 budgets. But my provocation, if you will, out to our audience and out to the world is, where's the B2B version of this, right? Where, you have, of course, things like Netline and sort of content syndication and things and blah, blah, blah. Fine. Those are all great. But why isn't Salesforce? Why isn't Adobe? Why isn't Microsoft? Where is the retail media network for B2B? Because I can just see a huge opportunity there. If I'm marketing a consulting service or a generator or whatever, I might want to put my paid media on Salesforce Plus or on an Adobe Content Network or on something, and we can see examples of this. Arrow Electronics, which you and I have covered extensively, bought all these publications. Now they all operate sort of independently, et cetera, but they could very easily conjoin a lot of those things into sort of more of a B2B retail media network and sell those things across network if they're not already doing that, and really create something very, very interesting in the B2B space. So I just think it's a fascinating trend for next year.
I think it's interesting. I think it's just really difficult to do because the buyers and the influencers that are watching have such different needs across the different channels. That's why B2B media is like, oh, okay, well, I've got this B2B media channel and we're just going out to these 5,000 people that they specify these types of products or manufacture, engineering or whatever. So that's why you never see some of these channels grow and work with each other from a sales capacity like you're talking about, because the target audience is so incredibly different.
Yeah.
So that you'd have to have it on some wider. You could do it on maybe technology or something like that.
Well, I just think of, so most of those companies, the Microsofts, the Salesforce, the HubSpots of the world, they all have partner networks, right? They all have sort of, partner platforms where you can go on and you can, hey, I can buy a solution that fits right with HubSpot, right? If I was a B2B marketer, I might want to put my ad on there, even if I didn't have an integration with one of those platforms, right? And they could think about monetizing those platforms in a different kind of way. It's just, that's my only point.
No, I totally see it. There's, again, we could get into a whole bunch of issues. It would be interesting to see if you talk to a CMO, how difficult it would be to accept money in that capacity.
I totally get it. I totally get it.
It's like, oh my God, how do we account for this type of thing?
Well,
I agree with you. I think there's an opportunity there.
And by the way,
talked about new revenue from that, so you build an audience and drive revenue from that standpoint. Sometimes they think it's more of a bother.
Agreed. Totally agreed. Yeah. That was always the problem in the B2C world, right?
Yeah,
we used to hear this from Julie Fleischer, right? At Kraft, when she was doing Food and Family magazine, that was a paid subscription to that print magazine. It was like, well, how does that, the CFO would be like, where does that money go? It's like, I don't know, it just kind of goes. There's like kind of they don't know how to deal with it.
We're not a media company. And you're like, oh, yes, you are actually. But you just don't know it. You just, what do you got going on this week?
I am work. Everybody's filling in this week because they want to take the next 2 weeks off. So I am just slammed busy with client work. How about you?
I'm looking forward to seeing the Browns win on Sunday.
Yeah. Oh, we got a big game coming up. Philadelphia.
We have to you already, and I know you're trying to chase the Eagles, your Cowboys, but you probably are going to make the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
It is still very much in doubt, and we need a win at home against Jacksonville with my new favorite quarterback, Mr. Joe Flacco.
There it is. He's playing well. He played
well. The defense sort of,
Yeah, they fell apart, but
it's just it's a regular Brown season.
You're hot and you're cold. You're bad
that's
and
exactly
you're bold.
what's going on. But I'll be there. I will be there rooting for them. So
all right.
So yay, sports team.
Yay, sports ball.
Yay, sports ball.
Thank all of you for putting up with our nonsense for yet another hour. We really, really appreciate it. And we will see you again next week. And until we see you again next week, just remember, it's your story to tell. Tell it well. We'll see you next week on This Old Marketing.